Hey everybody, hope you're doing good today. Just thought I'd do a little bit of a Spyderco collection update. I've gotten a couple new knives in the past 2 months and felt like I should do another sort of collection video. Um, if you're a frequenter of my channel, you'll notice that I don't have my Spyderco Tenacious anymore. I ended up giving that away and probably end up picking up another one because I did actually like that knife. It bit me a couple times, so I know it actually slices pretty damn well. Maybe just go through some of the ones that I've done in previous videos, collection videos. I do have a Spyderco Delica 4. Took me a little bit of a sort of warming up to this knife. Really didn't dig it the first time I actually carried it for about a week. When you're using it, and I know this is not the intended use for this knife, but I use all my knives for some sort of wood carving. Time and time again, I use folding knives when I'm out in the bush, and when you're using this for really hard sort of carvings, like taking big chunks of wood out of a stick type thing, you could feel this lockback move around. What it's doing is putting pressure down on it, so it's pushing this. And I don't think I'll be able to do it on camera so you could see it. No, you can't. But you do notice a little bit of sort of rock. You could probably hear it if I shut up. So it does have a little bit of play in it, and that's the way it came to me. But when you're actually using it as an EDC, it doesn't really matter. Cutting cardboard, breaking down boxes, that sort of thing. Even doing food prep, you don't notice it. So it's took me quite a while to warm up to this knife, but I do like it. It is a good quality knife. VG10 steel does take a razor sharp edge very easily and keeps it for a decent amount of time. It is prone to sort of rolling or getting flat spots if you're using it a little bit harder than you should be. But if you know how to sharpen your knives, it's not really a problem. The action on it's pretty decent. Not the smoothest knife that Spyderco makes by any stretch of the means, but it is a smooth backlock. One thing I did like about this right off the bat was the actual scales on it. I like the grip of them, and I actually do like the look of them. It is a nice knife overall, and it's definitely worth the money you'd spend on it. Just a sort of sidebar, I've been thinking about getting an Endura, but thinking about getting the HAP 40 steel Endura. Heard really great things about that, and that's sort of one I'm looking at getting in the near future. So that's the Delica. I'll sort of leave these all open. Next up, one of my all-time favorites, the Sage 1. I'm a liner lock guy. I don't really like frame locks too much. Sucks to be me because there's a lot of great design knives out there that just happen to be a frame lock. To me and what I use my knives for, frame locks aren't something I'm looking for. Like I said before, using folding knives to carve on wood. You could tell me to get a fixed blade. I already have many fixed blades, so I don't want to hear it. Just sitting on the back porch type thing, doing some carvings, because I do actual wood carvings. If you frequent my Instagram page, you've seen some of the stuff that I've done. Just little figures, sort of faces, carving wood rings, pipes, that sort of thing. Just as a hobby and something that relaxes me. Folding knives are where it's at for that because you need an actual smaller blade. This Sage 1 has been remarkable. Ever since the day I got it, I knew all the reviews about it were spot on. Super solid lockup on this, no blade play. The lockup's remarkable. Hasn't changed spots since I got it, and I use this and play with it constantly. It's a really smooth knife, guys. Anyone who has any of the Sage series knows that. One thing that I did a little bit of a sort of post before on Instagram also was this G10 carbon fiber laminate, sort of comparing it to the ZT actual carbon fiber, and I sort of prefer this one. The look of carbon fiber with none of the sort of voids, and it's actually quite crisper, so you could sort of see that how this one's sort of shining more and it's more noticeable, the pattern. I kind of like that, so I never have anything bad to say about Spyderco's G10 / carbon fiber laminate. Their standard blade shape, really nice, that leaf shape blade. Great action on this, very ergonomic, whether in the forward position or the back position like this. And just a great EDC knife. Mentioned before too in a previous video on the upcoming Sage 5 that'll feature a compression lock, and super excited for that knife because I love just the overall shape and size of these Sage series. The only thing that's different with the actual Sage 5 is the compression lock, and it'll actually have nested steel liners. I think to pull off the compression lock, Spyderco has to have nested liners, but that's just sort of me thinking out loud. Great knife, great EDC blade, and great overall knife. Just for pretty much everything. You could do food prep. Like I said, I do plenty of wood carving with this knife, and just your general EDC tasks. Next up, same sort of size category, would be the Spyderco UKPK. This here just happens to be the titanium version, and they do still make this knife, not in the titanium version, but in the FRN scales and the lightweight versions. Really great knife if you like slip joints, or if you can't actually carry a knife with a lock. This would be highly recommended. Really fits the hand nicely. And honestly, if you're gripping this knife like you're supposed to, there's no way that blade's going to close on your fingers. Even if you did stab something, the worst that would happen is the sort of lock or the notch joint would give out and your fingers would catch that blade. Great action on this. Great little walk and talk to it also. It does sort of have a half stop, but it's pulled off a little bit differently than traditional slip joints, in that it doesn't want to sort of close, and then it sort of takes a little bit more pressure to close it, and it sort of locks into that position. Little bit different blade shape. It's more like a Cali sort of blade shape, in that it's sort of an elongated leaf shape, very fine tip on it. Decent blade stock on it, and really nice jimping. Sort of has the Paramilitary 2 jimping where it really locks your finger in. S30V steel, and titanium sort of slabs as the handle. I switched out the silver pocket clip that was on this originally with the black pocket clip that's on the Spyderco Sage 1, and I think both of them look better respectively. Like the contrast between the titanium and the black more than I did the silver clip. I carry this quite frequently. If I tend to carry a small sort of EDC fixed blade, like my Tops UTE, I'll carry something like this along with one of my Victorinox knives. Going to sort of public places or somewhere where I'll be around a lot of people, I'll tend to carry this knife also, because it really won't get me in trouble. Can't really call this a tactical knife when it's a slip joint type thing, right? So that's the Spyderco UKPK titanium. Nothing really new there. I've covered all this in previous videos. Paramilitaries, I do got 2 of them. Would like to get the Paramilitary that just came out for 2016 in S110 steel with the blue G10 scales. Blue purple, a lot of people are calling it blurple. I'll just call it blue for any video that I sort of do about them. And just a great knife overall. A lot of people who don't like Spyderco knives or hate them for whatever reason like to sort of say this isn't a good sort of hard use knife, but I tend to always disagree. A hard use knife for me is something that has a really sharp edge, so you don't really have to put a lot of pressure and force into actually doing what you need to do. So pretty much for me, any knife can be a hard use knife. But great ergonomics, no matter where you hold it type thing. Great lock action, very smooth. No blade play in either of the examples that I have. This is just your standard satin with the Digicam scales, and then I also have just a standard black one. Do have that sort of custom titanium backspacer that I put in on this one. It's anodized a bluish purple, even though it doesn't really like to come across on camera. You just have to have the light right, or actually have sunlight to make it sort of show up. Does change the overall balance of the knife. That's one thing I noticed. Like this one sort of has a neutral balance. This one is definitely butt heavy just because of that. But still a great ergonomic knife. This is the one I usually carry most of the times, and really beat on type thing. Snapped a little bit of the tip off this one, but just sort of fixed it up. You can see that it's not as pointy as the one that I very rarely carry. This is just really a backup for in case this ever sort of fails or breaks, or I have to send it back for whatever reason. I do have a backup. So those are the two paramilitaries. I had this one for a long time also. It's the original Spyderco Manix, well, not the original, but one of the original Spyderco Manix 2s. It does have the saber ground blade, hollow grind, S30V steel, and this one doesn't have any milling holes in the liners itself. Been carrying this one more and more. Used to have two of these, but ended up trading one for a Benchmade. Really would like to get also the 2016 Manix 2 that's in S110V. I think it'd be enough of a difference between this knife and the actual new one with the blue G10 scales that I would actually carry both type things. So this is saber ground and the other one's a full flat ground like all of them are nowadays, and different blade steel, different handles. So I think it'd be a big enough change from this knife to that knife that I'd actually carry them both. Once again, very ergonomic. All Spydercos tend to be in any position. They sort of say that they design the knife for the hand, not for the eye type thing. So they don't really design pretty knives, but they design comfortable knives. Sort of disagree with that because I like the way Spydercos look. And getting to the new ones. First off, I got this Spyderco Velotin from a good friend of mine in the States for my birthday. He grabbed this out of his own collection and gave it to me, and I've been really impressed with this knife. Excuse me. You can see the polished G10 scales there. Really gorgeous. Not so much traction in the scales alone, but the grip gives you all the traction you could ever need with a knife. Even if you're using this for a self-defense knife, I don't see you slipping up on the blade at all. Gives you a little bit of jimping here, just enough that it aids in gripping, but not enough to tear up your thumb. Super ergonomic, this one, just because of that thick handle. It really makes it a comfortable knife. Really thick blade stock. A lot of people say the Paramilitary 2 has thick blade stock. Doesn't really hold a candle to this thing. This is a 4mm blade, and they really utilized it really well. Hollow grind with that sort of convex or flat ground tip. Slices really well. You could do food prep with this and you don't even notice that's a 4mm blade stock. Just a gorgeous knife. This is one that I considered a grail knife for a very long time. Didn't think I'd actually ever get one because here in Canada they're almost $300, but having one in hand now, if I could have held one before getting this, I definitely would have bought it, because this is one of those knives that you got to have sort of in your hand to fully appreciate. You can see the thick liners and the thick lock bar on here. It does take some pressure or force to get that lock bar undone. Like, there's a lot of tension on this lock bar, but it doesn't hurt to undo it. It doesn't sort of impede the overall playability of the knife, if you want to say that. And it definitely flicks out easily. Have a sort of harder time Spidey flicking this just because of the longer handle. I seem to need to bury the butt of the knife into my palm, like this, against my palm to actually Spidey flick stuff. But every now and then when I'm trying to Spidey flick this, just screwing around, it won't come fully open. Has nothing to do with how smooth the knife is, and I'll just show you that now. Once you take the pressure off the lock bar, this is a free dropper, and there's no blade play in this whatsoever. What about, so maybe the blade stops, talk a little bit about them. The blade stops on this are located sort of where a thumb stud would be. They're very sort of flush to the handle, but you could actually use them as thumb studs, and quite easily at that. You could even just, let my camera focus, you could even just use those as the opening method to flick them if you didn't want to bury your thumb into that actual spider hole. Just a really well built knife, and something I'm absolutely proud to have in my collection. And last but definitely not least, I went to S&R Knives and got a first-hand view at a lot of great knives. Something I've been wanting to do ever since the first time I got to go to S&R Knives, and just held a bunch of knives that I've been contemplating over the years, and sort of decided on this one here. This is the Spyderco Native 5 G10 S35 VN steel. As soon as I got to S&R, and after holding a bunch of different knives, held this one, I knew I was going to walk out of the store with it. It reminds me so much of my beloved Sage here. The handle shape is quite similar, and the blade shape is actually quite similar. If you put sort of a thumb ramp that's like on the Sage 1 here onto the blade of the Native 5, you would have pretty much the same blade shape. This has a slight swedge on top, which lets this knife pierce very easily. So if you're like piercing into cardboard and doing cuts, this is a pro right here. The lockback on this is very different than the lockback on a Delica. First of all, there's no Boyd detent here, or a little notch in the lock bar, which makes this knife really easy to disengage. When I first got this, it was a little bit stiff, meaning that once you depress the lock bar, the blade would just hang there. It wouldn't drop freely. Just opening and closing it and using it a few times, that sort of remedied itself, and it became a free dropper. That's mostly because of the pivot system in this. It's the same pivot as your Paramilitary or Manix 2. So you get that really smooth opening and closing, but you still get a little bit of drag just because it is lock back and you have that pressure of the lock bar always on the blade tang. Spyderco's S35 VN is awesome. It's heat treated to what it should be, and keeps a really nice edge for a long time. Basically just dropped this when I first got it, and it's been good ever since. And I've prepared a lot of food with this. I've cut down a lot of boxes with this, and it's been holding up really great. Love this sort of size for EDC, the under 7-inch sort of size. really not cumbersome, and I don't really mind taking it out in public and actually using it in front of people who necessarily aren't knife people. They don't really think anything about it. So that's just been my Spyderco collection update. I hope you liked seeing these knives and listening to me ramble for a little bit longer. And thanks for watching, guys. And I'm trying to put out some more videos, regardless of how sort of long they are. I tend to do longer videos nowadays. I see by my time right now I'm at about 20.5 minutes. I just like to talk about knives, so sometimes I get a little bit carried away. If you want to see shorter videos, let me know. If you want to see longer videos, let me know. If there's any sort of specific videos that you want to see, let me know. Test videos, that sort of thing. I'll be more than happy to do them. So thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for more.